Hello, my name is Shannon Smith. I am the Education and Community Engagement Manager here at Arts Fairfax. I'm a white woman. I have brown hair back in a bun, and I'm wearing a blue and white striped shirt. I'm here today with my colleague, Kelly Choi.
Thanks, Shannon. My name is Kelly Choi. I'm the grants manager for Arts Fairfax. I'm a white woman with medium length blonde hair. I'm wearing a green and white striped sweater. Welcome.
Great. So today we're going to talk about the Fairfax County Poet Laureate application. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and start our presentation. All right, so to start, I will note that we had this presentation yesterday. We unfortunately ran into some technology issues. So this is a re-record. We had a very wonderful turnout, and we thought it was important to make sure that this information was publicly accessible on our website, and we could share it with the applicants as well. So we are going to be discussing the questions that we received at the end of this presentation when we did conduct a Q&A. To start, this is the Arts Fairfax team. We have a new president and CEO on the top left, Stuart Holtz. We're very excited to have him. In terms of the Poet Laureate themselves, they will be working directly with myself and again, Kelly Choi. All right, today's agenda, we started with introductions already. I'm going to touch a little bit about Arts Fairfax as an organization. We'll go over the Fairfax Poet Laureate role and program goals, as well as previous Poet Laureates. We'll review the eligibility, the selection timeline of this process, the review process and criteria, as well as the term and award amount. And we'll finish up with looking over the required documents and the application on submittable. Arts Fairfax is the designated local arts agency of Fairfax County. What we do is we focus on opportunities for discovery, opportunity, and community. For discovery, we have an arts directory in which arts organizations or artists can post themselves. We also have an events calendar to post what events are going on in Fairfax County at any day, any month. We additionally have a public art locator to showcase all the murals and sculptures and public art around the county. Next, we have opportunities available. We have assorted newsletters that review the jobs and artist calls available to artists in our county. We also host professional development workshops. As for community, we love to engage them at the Arts Fairfax Awards. We also host a Fairfax Arts Advocacy Day, which happened last week. And we have a Capital One Hall Community Arts Partnership, in which we can offer community rates to arts organizations. In terms of the Fairfax Poet Laureate, Arts Fairfax seeks to raise the visibility of poetry through this designation. We want to celebrate and support a poet, to engage new audiences, create new opportunities, and overall just encourage the creation of poetry and other literary works. The Poet Laureate program demonstrates the poet's achievements and their demonstrated history of accomplishments, while we also work with them to create opportunities for connection with the Fairfax County communities. In terms of the role, this role will start with an inaugural reading. We'll look over the timeline in a future slide. During this term, we will be consulting with Arts Fairfax staff to create and execute a community service project to be accomplished during their tenure. Project activities could help foster literacy, expand audiences and appreciation for poetry, and overall could engage cultural experiences for county residents. We also wish to help the Poet Laureate build networks and opportunities for poets to read and engage new audiences. That could be local businesses, book festivals, schools, parks, and any other venues. And at the end of the term, the Poet Laureate will provide an original poem. Throughout the tenure, they will additionally represent Fairfax County at events mutually agreed with Arts Fairfax and dependent on the Poet Laureate's availability. The goals of the Poet Laureate program are as follows. We wish to recognize and provide support for poets and writers. We wish to use the arts and humanities to engage people in cross-cultural and community-wide exchange of ideas, stories, and culture. We want to encourage wide participation in poetry through diverse cultural programming accessible to all residents of Fairfax County. We want to promote opportunities for poets, for literary organizations, for writers to present and celebrate their creative endeavors. And we want to be a catalyst for increased private sector support for poetry and other literary activities through leveraged funding. A little bit about the previous Poet Laureates. This program began in 2020 with the inaugural Poet Laureate Nicole Tong, who served a 2-year term. Nicole Tong's community service project was called Poetry Lives Here, where she celebrated living poets. Tong partnered with George Mason University MFA students to conduct a type of poetry residency program at the Fairfax County Juvenile Detention Center. Tong and Mason students themselves went to the center and discussed poetry with the students there, encouraged them to write their own. And additionally, by doing so, she amplified living poets by saying who is around the county and around Virginia and who is a contemporary poet. She additionally continued this work on Twitter with a Twitter page called Poetry Lives Here. Danielle Badra is our current Poet Laureate. She's also serving a 2-year term. Her term will end this fall, but her current community service project is called Poetry in the Parks. It works in partnership with the Fairfax County Park Authority to invite area poets and park goers to consider the relationship between nature and poetry. She does so in readings and workshops alike. The next poetry event is actually this Saturday. It is now unfortunately sold out, but it will be at Green Spring Gardens. There is a waitlist available, and the following poetry event will be a workshop at Turner Farm on Saturday, May 4th. In terms of eligibility, we ask that the individuals applying for this role must reside in Fairfax County for at least 12 months prior to the application deadline. You can see all of this information on the guidelines as well. Individuals must be at least 21 years of age. They must be actively working in or deriving income from poetry. And they must have a demonstrated experience of publishing or presenting original poetry. This could include one work by an established press or a combination of at least 2 works, either in poetry journals, magazines, or websites. Again, all of this information and more is available on our guidelines with more specific details. Continuing the eligibility, individuals must be identified as a primary author of works described in the application, which Kelly will touch on later. They must not be enrolled as an undergraduate student. And for the specified 3-year period, the individual must be willing and able to promote poetry and design and implement the community service project. Lastly, individuals must not have been appointed as the Fairfax County Poet Laureate previously. If you'll notice, we specify a 3-year period. The 2 Poet Laureates that I have just described as our previous Poet Laureates served 2-year terms. This year, we are expanding the program. We're very excited about that to a 3-year term. In terms of the selection timeline, the application is now open. It will remain open until June 28th at 7 p.m. In August 13th specifically, we have contracted a Poet Laureate advisory panel who will meet virtually to select the Poet Laureate. They will be reviewing all eligible applications and will take that time to make their recommendation to Arts Fairfax staff. In October, that is when the public announcement of the Poet Laureate will be conducted, and the new Poet Laureate can start their term then. I will stop sharing and turn it over to Kelly.
Thanks, Shannon. So as Shannon kind of mentioned, I will both be talking through the criteria for the application for Poet Laureate, as well as the evaluation criteria. And then we will take some time at the end of our conversation today to look at Submittable, which is the software that we use to apply for Poet Laureate, and just walk through what that looks like. So I will share my screen. screen right now. And so as we continue to think about the process of applying to be the next Poet Laureate, the review process itself begins with Arts Fairfax staff reviewing whether or not a submission is eligible. So if you've included all the required information and the information that you have submitted meets the requirement for the program. So we may, during that time frame, reach out to applicants to clarify information or ask for additional information. You should know that if an application is incomplete, it may be rejected without being evaluated by the panel. Beyond that, any application that's eligible will be evaluated by the Poet Laureate panel. And we'll talk more about that panel in a minute. You should also know that both the Arts Fairfax Grants Committee and Board of Directors do vote to approve the final recommendation of the Fairfax County Poet Laureate. So as you're thinking about putting together an application, I know it's helpful to know what that evaluation criteria looks like. First off, we do convene a panel to review each application, and that includes approximately 5 or 6 other professionals with a knowledge or background in poetry or the poetry community. They will review and evaluate each application that is eligible on their own merit. They are not able to consider any outside information they might know about a poet or a program other than what's included in that application. The criteria that the applications are evaluated on are the applicant's record of professional poetry activity and achievement, the artistic merit of the work, and the proposed engagement project for the community service project. So you heard Shannon mention this just a moment ago. The Poet Laureate will serve a 3-year term that begins October of 2024 and will end in September of 2027. There's a $5,000 stipend for each term for the Poet Laureate. And then additional funds are available from Arts Fairfax depending on the work that you're doing. We may be able to support supplemental materials that are included in the community service project. So right now we'll begin to look through each of the application and eligibility questions and requirements. As Shannon kind of touched on earlier, the Fairfax County Poet Laureate is required to be a resident of Fairfax County. So we will ask you to submit both a photocopy of a valid public identification, as well as some kind of document of your current residency. We're asking that applicants have lived in Fairfax County for at least 12 months. So we have a couple of examples as you're thinking about meeting that eligibility criteria, just some of the things that we can use to confirm your eligibility. If you have any questions about what you should submit in this section, please feel free to reach out to Shannon and I. All right, so we'll continue to step through the application itself. Like I mentioned, I'm going to talk about each requirement here, and then we'll look at it in Submittable so you can see the information there as well. From each applicant, we require work samples, a resume, and supplemental materials. There's specific things that are outlined under each of those categories. For most of the work here, you'll see that we're requesting information from the last 3 years. So we're looking for your recent work. Within the work sample specifically, we're looking for poems that are either published or unpublished and just reflect your highest quality work. In addition to that, we've requested a poet biography. This is a paragraph form summarizing who you are, what your most recent work is, and a highlight of your major accomplishments. We're also looking for a poet statement. So something that discusses your work and what informs it, how you view poetry, what you view the role of poetry to be in the community, and how your past experiences with poetry have shaped your work. We'll also look for an outline of your proposed community service project. As Shannon kind of touched on, with both the Poetry in the Parks program and the Poetry Lives Here program with our past poet laureates, the community service project is a huge part of this program. So specifically, we're looking for you to address an idea for a cross-cultural, community-wide engaging poetry project. Outline your vision for what that could be, suggest activities that you would include, and think about possible partners for that experience within the county. In addition, there is an opportunity for you, or a requirement for you, to submit your poetry portfolio. This would be up to 10 examples of original poems that are published or unpublished. In addition to that section, we'll also ask for any publication credits that you have. The piece here to note, and I think we addressed earlier as well, this would exclude anything that is self-published. So anything that is published as part of a collection or a magazine, please include that here. This would not include a self-published. There's more details in our guidelines about this section as well. Supplemental materials to include. These are things that the bullets here are suggestions. There might be other things you want to include, and the pieces here you may or may not have, right? So any work that you have done where there's been a program or promotional material, you can share that. Any newspaper article that you have been engaged with, letters of support or awards, you can submit up to 10 items in this category. And again, we're asking for work that's taken place in the most recent 3 years. We also ask that you create a short video introduction of yourself. You'll choose a favorite poem or poet and describe why you appreciate that work and how that work has influenced you and could influence your work within the county. The idea with this is that it's an introduction for you and how you would present different topics to an audience here throughout your tenure. We do also require a resume, so a list of your full professional experience. This again would take more of a list form than a paragraph form, but it can include publications, readings, teaching, lecture experience, of course, any awards, recognitions that you have, and then your own education as well. And in the application, there's also an open section for submission notes. Since, and we'll look closely in submittable, but since a few of those questions are formed so that they're an upload of an attachment, you may find you need to include some context for those attachments. So if it's helpful to explain what an attachment was within the supplemental materials, that's a space where you can add those notes. All right, so thinking beyond the application and what you should be aware of as the terms and conditions of the Poet Laureate program. You will be asked to sign an agreement if you are selected as the Poet Laureate, and this will be spelled out in more detail. We kind of mentioned the award announcement itself. In different places we say September, in different places we say October. So what tends to happen is the board approves the selection of the Poet Laureate sometime in September. We do usually notify and contract that person in late September, and a public announcement is made in usually early October, sort of depending on how long it takes each of those people to respond to different things. So that's why you see sort of a vague variation there. We will not have any updates between the date of submission and that selection in September and October. The process takes time, and as we go through those steps, there's not much to share at that point. Other terms and conditions that you should know, you must continue to meet the eligibility spelled out in the guidelines throughout the period that you are the poet laureate. So you must continue to live in Fairfax County and meet all the other specifics that are in that eligibility section. In addition to that, we do require that, and I'll talk a little bit more about this in a minute, that you will acknowledge Arts Fairfax, and Arts Fairfax will acknowledge you in publicizing the events around the Poet Laureate. So again, that's something that we will work in conjunction with you to do. Same thing, in order to receive payment, there are certain aspects of the program that you will be asked to report on or provide information and documentation about how that process worked. So like I said, we do require the Fairfax County Poet Laureate to acknowledge Arts Fairfax during the duration of their term. And we kind of have this set up for anyone who is a grantee of Arts Fairfax. There's some information on our website you can see, but we will ask you to put information on our calendar that we will then share with our audience as well. We will ask you to tag Arts Fairfax in social media and share our logo in conjunction with anything that is planned as part of the Fairfax Poet Laureate's role. We can share more about that as the selection process continues too. All right, so before we move into the application itself, just a couple of tips that we like to share with anybody who is applying for anything in Arts Fairfax. So save your application in Submittable. It's a pretty reliable platform, but I do hear, especially if you were to leave that tab open for a couple of days and then come back to it, just save, exit out of the program, and come back in instead of leaving it open. That is kind of a way that I've heard people lose information. So go ahead, hit save as much as you can. Of course, write clearly and concisely and do not use jargon. The poetry panel certainly does have that background in poetry, but staying away from jargon is going to be easier for everyone to read and fully understand your work and your experience. Check your narrative for grammar and spelling, and do your best to not repeat information in two different places in the application. Keep in mind that Shannon and I and Arts Fairfax staff do not participate or score in the panel itself. We will be present for the panel, and we will ensure that the panel are evaluating and discussing on the criteria that is recommended, but we do not actually score the applications after they're received. Please double check that all of your contact information in the application is correct. If there's a typo in your email or phone number, we will lose the ability to connect with you. So please go carefully in that section and make sure that your contact details are accurate. And then again, another reminder to log out of Submittable when you're not working, as I kind of mentioned. Last piece, when you are uploading documents or sharing links, please make sure the link is both active and available to view without a password or paying for that link. All right. So those are our tips. And I think we will now take a quick minute to go look at Submittable. I will stop sharing this page and start over here. There it is. All right. So this is Submittable. This is a platform that Arts Fairfax uses to accumulate all of our applications, not just Fairfax Poet Laureate. So in a minute, you'll see lots of opportunities. We will share this link and it should be available on the Poet Laureate webpage. There's something like take me to the application or apply here. That should get you to this page. If you scroll down, there's a bit of information about who to contact for each program. Right now, the first application listed is the Fairfax County Poet Laureate. So in order to start the application, we will go to Submit. This is where it will actually prompt you to create a login. If you don't already have a submittable login, you'll be asked to do that before you start the application. For the sake of time today, I'm already logged into our account. So the first thing you see is actually the eligibility questions. It's 4 or 5 questions that just start to make sure you should be applying to this grant, that you're eligible for it. I will also highlight a link right here in the description that takes you back to our website to view the guidelines, if that's something that you are interested in doing as well. So I will quickly go through this eligibility and just kind of say, yes, we're a resident of Fairfax County, we're deriving income. I'm not currently enrolled as a student. And then I am willing to promote poetry for 3 years and I have published work. So once we hit next, we should get to the application itself. And so again, you'll have this up at the top of the page to reference. And you'll begin by first uploading the documents that we kind of looked at in the PowerPoint for eligibility verification. So this is a drag and drop. You can bring files right over here. There's a note on each of these questions about which files are acceptable to attach in this section. So if you're having any trouble with file attachments, check this. And then of course, let us know if you're getting stuck in the process. I want to note that on a lot of our questions, you'll see kind of a primary question at the top of the page, the question itself, and then below the upload or the text box below the answer, there's more information. So we're specifically outlining here what it is we need to see in this section. Hopefully that makes the process easier for you. So several basic information questions. Double check your mailing address, phone number, please. First one to note, Fairfax County Magisterial District. If you don't know that off of the top of your head, right below the question, there's a link here that will take you to a website where you can input your address. It will give you the answer. Again, some more basic information. And then as we get into the application questions, you will note that each question also has a suggested word count, but it is not a requirement. So we're asking first for that poet biography. And again, you can see a couple of sort of sub prompts of what you should include in your poet biography right below this section. So it's all really spelled out in the application and it's easy for you to find. Poet statement that we discussed. Your thoughts on a potential community service project. Let me get into those work samples. Again, acceptable files, formats listed here. We also have suggested a naming structure for each file. If that is something that you can rename, it is helpful to sort of use those titles for the documents. It helps our reviewers find everything fast and easy. Same thing with supplemental materials. The video introduction is asking you for a link to a video that you then create in YouTube or Vimeo. And then your resume would go there at the end. And this last question, submission notes, that's the piece I mentioned where If you've uploaded attachments in the questions above and you think they need some context, you can spell that out in this question. At the very end of the application, you're asked kind of for your signature with your first and last name. You're asked to agree to the terms of use. You can also click on the terms of use and view them here. And agree. And then again, down here is where you would either save your draft or submit the application when you're ready. So that is what submittable looks like. And I'm going to stop my screen share here now. And I know Shannon and I had quite a few questions yesterday, and we do want to talk through those questions that our attendees submitted yesterday. And so, Shannon, do you have some of those questions?
Thank you for walking us through submittable.
Yeah.
As Kelly mentioned, we did receive some amazing questions. We were able to jot them down from memory before we ran into some technology issues. So we did want to take this opportunity to still address them. They're very worthwhile. To start off, we had a question for Kelly. The question was, am I eligible to apply if I live in the city of Falls Church, McLean, or Langley?
Yeah. The requirements of the grant are to be a Fairfax County resident. If you are not sure if you're a Fairfax County resident, and when I hear that question, I know McLean and Langley, I think, are generally Fairfax County. Parts of Falls Church are Fairfax County, and parts of Falls Church are not Fairfax County. So one, that link in the question, in the application, it's like Fairfax Find My Neighborhood website. If you Google that, you'll probably get to it. That can help you determine where your address is. And two, if you're not sure, Shannon and I can help you determine where your address is. So please, if you have any question at all, we certainly don't want anyone to unnecessarily go through a submission if that is in question. So if you have any question, please reach out to us and we can help you confirm.
Great. Another question about the submittable application. Are recommendations required in the application?
Yeah, so a recommendation would fall under supplemental materials and you can include them, but it is not specifically required. If you have one and you want to, that's great. If there are other supplemental materials you want to prioritize, I think that works for the application too.
Wonderful. The next question was, how are you advertising this opportunity to the diverse constituents of Fairfax County? I will answer this in that it's a great question. There are about 1.2 million residents, so we have a lot of ground to cover. The way that we advertise this opportunity is primarily through our own newsletters and our own social media. We have had some magazines and newspapers pick up articles about the Poetry in the Parks program, which our current Poet Laureate conducts. In those articles, we have asked that they include information about the application to be the next Poet Laureate. That said, we do have a variety of partnerships with organizations throughout the county. So we are hoping to explore those and get the word out more. We are always taking suggestions if you think we're not reaching anyone, but we are very excited about this opportunity. It's free to apply, and we think it's a really worthwhile role. So we would love to get this information out to anyone who is eligible. We received another question. It was, if an applicant is a person with limited mobility, can the community service project be conducted virtually? The answer is yes. That would be you would have to detail that in your description of your community service project, but it is absolutely an option. You can just describe how you would like to conduct your program virtually, and perhaps how you would like to use that opportunity to reach certain community members. It's definitely an option. You can partner with organizations that may already be conducting programs virtually. We'd love to read about it. Another question that speaks similarly to the previous one, can you speak more to community partnerships? Absolutely. In terms of structure, we try and keep it very open for the application. We want you to dream big. We want to hear about opportunities that you wish to expand within the county or gaps that you see in the county that you wish to fill. We think it's really worthwhile to have the applicants choose how they wish to address this community service project with their passions and their ideas. That said, our current Poet Laureate has been conducting about 4 to 5 events per year, and those have been in person on the weekends. Each event is free and about 1.5 hours. So if that helps just kind of add a framework to your application, that's good to keep in mind. But again, we're looking for this person to decide how they wish to shape their tenure, and I will work with them personally to see what we can make happen and when we can make it happen. The other previous Poet Laureate, Nicole Tong, also conducted a community service project in partnership with the George Mason Center for Literacy, Engagement and Publishing Practice. So she worked with MFA students and they together went to the Juvenile Detention Center. So if you have an organization that you are already in partnership with, or you have a relationship with, it's always helpful to leverage that in your application.
And I am also remembering another question about why did the term go from 2 years to 3 years? And that is a change this year. Can you talk a little bit about that change?
I absolutely can. In terms of why the term changed, the way we have found the flow to be, and again, we've only had 2 previous Poet Laureates, is that our first year, it's new for both the Poet Laureate and Arts Fairfax to discuss the goals of this program. How do you want to outline the community service project? How do you want to conduct it? We spend a lot of that first year gathering partnerships, gathering strategies, and working to implement those events. By the second year, we have started those community service project events. The community has learned about them, they're excited, they attend, and we see a growing attendance. And then by the second year, the program is done. So what we found is that there's kind of a fall off, and community members will ask us to continue it, but the Poet Laureate term is now over. So what we're hoping to do in this 3-year term is just continue the good work that each Poet Laureate has done and could do. We want to expand and continue this momentum because we know that it is possible. And this will also give us more opportunity to potentially conduct longer events. So there's just an opportunity there that we would like to see realized if possible. I believe that was the end of our questions. Kelly, am I right?
That's all I'm remembering. Yep.
If anyone has any other questions they wish to address personally, our emails and phone numbers are all over the website as well as guidelines. We're happy to address anything we can, either over the phone or email. But again, the application will close June 28th. So please get your questions to us by that time so we can help you before you submit. Thank you, Kelly, for sharing that information. I'll leave it up there for another second.
Yeah.
Otherwise, that conducts our Poet Laureate information session. All right, I hope everyone enjoyed, and we hope to see your application soon.